Awesome, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is 10:01 a.m. Nice palindrome, and I'll call the meeting of the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee to order. We have Randy Brown, Greg Mezey, and me, Veronica Pillar, in chambers. Our chair, Annie Koreman, is joining by Zoom, and so I'm going to be doing the work of chairing for today because you can't really see who's got their hands up in chambers when you're on the Zoom. And I think because Amanda Champion asked to be excused. Yes. Do we have any public comment? Nope, seeing no one in chambers. Do we have any changes to the agenda? I think we have one resolution to add. So I guess under number 7, Department of Planning and Sustainability, we have to add resolution number, oh, there's no number, sorry. It's called Budget Reappropriation of Grant Funds to the 2024 Budget for the Business Energy Advisors New Construction Program, ID 12223. And do we need to vote to add this in committee? No? Okay. Great, it's added, and we'll get to it when we get to planning and sustainability. Any other changes? Seeing none, let us move to minutes approval from the January 17th meeting. Can I have a mover? Greg moves. Randy seconds. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, let's have a vote. Annie?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. All right, next up, advisory board appointments. We have 4, and they are to the Agriculture and Farmland Protection Board, George Franz, Agricultural Land Preservation Representative, term expires December 31, 2027, and Darren Buck, Farmer, term expires December 31, 2027. And then to the Climate and Sustainable Energy Board, also known as the CASE Board, we have Jaden Beck, member, term expires December 31, 2024, and J. Louise Bruce, member, term expires December 31, 2024. Can I get a mover for these appointments? Greg moves, Randy seconds. Hopefully no discussion. So let's vote. Annie?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That is approved unanimously. All right, on to the chair's report. Chair Annie Koreman, do you have a report?
I don't have a report. I was just going to comment on the liaison and voting seat assignments, and I wanted to see if I could be added, since the Ag and Farm Board is a voting seat, which Randy has graciously agreed to do again. We don't have an alternate, and I was wondering if I could be added as the alternate position on that.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, no objections
Just to make
here.
sure, is there any questions? Make sure I filled that out correctly. That everybody see if anybody has any questions on those.
And these are packet pages 9 and 10. I think it all looks good to me, and I'm happy with my appointments.
Okay, great, and thanks everybody who signed up to continue and to work on some new liaison boards.
And thank you for managing all of this, Annie. All right, anything else about liaison assignments or anything more in your chair's report, in a chair's report?
No, thank you.
Yeah. All right, moving right along quickly. Department of Planning and Sustainability. Ailey.
Hello. So first, do we want to do the resolution for the Business Energy Advisors Program?
Up to you, sure.
Okay, let's do that first, and then I'll do my presentation. So this is just a
All right, wait, I think we need to get it on the floor.
Oh,
So
sorry.
Greg moves. And Randy seconds. All right,
Okay.
now tell us about it.
So this is just a resolution that we have to do if we didn't spend all the funds from last year to move them, to be able to use them for this year. So there's $49,615.45 that we're hoping to move to the 2024 budget for the Business Energy Advisors Program. So if there's any questions, I can take those.
Remind us what that program is, or remind
Certainly.
me at least.
Sure. So it's a program for new construction and renovation, major renovations in the county where businesses or nonprofits or even municipalities can come to us, let us know of a design that they have, and then we've partnered with a couple of engineering firms. They take a look at their plan, and then provide updates or considerations rather for energy or to make it more sustainable, things of that nature.
Sounds great, thank you.
Yep.
Annie?
Haley, are you the one who works with organizations for this program?
Yep.
And so I know a couple of years ago, we had a summary, so maybe, I don't know if that's something you could do maybe at the end of this year or at some point when it's convenient for you, you know, like how many businesses and organizations, because I know it's not just businesses, but you know, how many came. I don't mean to make a lot of work, but I think it would help us understand. And then it also kind of gives a plug in the community, you know, who can apply for this program.
Yeah, certainly. I can do that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Let's vote on the resolution. Annie?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that passes unanimously. And then Haley, you've got a presentation?
Yeah, so I am going to give a presentation on the NYSEG and RG&E long-term gas plan. Let me just get my screen shared here. Okay, is that coming through? Okay, so this is just an informational presentation about this proceeding that's happening now. So we'll talk today about what is a long-term gas plan, why it matters to Tompkins County, who's involved, how we've been participating. I'll go over the current status, and then if you're interested in participating, how you might do that. So just for some context, I think it was May 12th, 2022, the Public Service Commission required that the 11 largest utilities in the state are required to develop a long-term gas plan. This will happen every 3 years, and they have to do a 20-year forecast for each plan. And the kind of guidance that they received to do this long-term gas planning is it must be consistent with the CLCPA and involve stakeholders throughout the utility area. These are some of the objectives that the companies, NYSEG and RG&E, listed out in the beginning of their plan. And so just to highlight a couple, like I said, want to be consistent with the CLCPA, ensure that New Yorkers are able to meet their energy needs, and then also be cost effective for ratepayers. So some of the, like why this matters, as I've mentioned throughout this already, the CLCPA has been established in New York State with goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions 40% by 2030 and 85% by 2050. And then also our county goals. In our energy strategy, we outline wanting to reach net zero by getting off of fossil fuels as fast as possible while remaining financially solvent. And also we want to make sure that this whole proceeding is done in a way that doesn't hurt residents or businesses, and is still able to help with a thriving economy and community. So just a little context of who's involved. So like the rate case, which I spoke to you about a couple months ago, this is a proceeding with the Department of Public Service Commission and the companies NYSEG and RG&E. But in this proceeding, we also have stakeholders from New York State's Department of Energy Conservation and NYSERDA. And then there are energy groups and business stakeholders. And we are also participants. And just a note, unlike the rate case, this proceeding is public, so there's no private negotiations like what we see through the rate case. So just a little bit on how we're participating. This is an iterative process. So far we've seen one gas plan that's been presented to us. We're expecting 2 more to come out. And so kind of how it works is the plan is put out. We have the opportunity to review it and submit comments. And so we actually already did that with the first plan that came out, because the solution or the recommendation from the companies that was put forward did not comply with the CLCPA or Tompkins County goals. It essentially didn't touch getting off of gas at all. So we provided comments that we kind of pulled insight from our roadmap and energy strategy to encourage that it complies with the CLCPA and also gets off of fossil fuels. And then we are expecting comments to come out this week, or sorry, not comments, the next plan to come out this week, and we'll do the same thing, review and make comments as necessary. Also, one other thing that we're participating in directly is kind of as guided by the Public Service Commission. There's going to be a meeting that focuses specifically on long-term gas planning in Tompkins County or decommissioning of the fossil fuel system. So we're going to participate in that and provide insight. So just a little bit more on the current status. They call those meetings technical conferences, and that's where they dig into specific topics. So far we've had ones on like non-pipe alternatives. I can't think of any other ones, do you know?
There was a couple on the cost of gas.
Yeah, cost of
financial
gas.
mechanisms.
Yeah, sorry, there's been so many. And so they dig in deep into those technical conferences or topics at the technical conferences. And those kind of help inform the plans that they put out in the future. So as I mentioned, we're waiting the second iteration. I would expect we'd get it this week. And then the final long-term plan will be filed in April of 2024. And then like the rate case, it has to go to the Public Service Commission, where they will either accept, deny, or suggest revisions to that plan. So if you're interested in participating, you can visit this link and look up the case number and just sign up to be part of the emails and get the notifications for the meetings. And now I can take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Haley. Questions from the committee? Greg.
I apologize for coughing, and I just put a cough drop in. So you had mentioned the decommissioning of the infrastructure. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, the gas lines.
So what does that mean? And especially as someone who just got a letter in the mail to my mailbox that said that they were going to be upgrading my gas line this summer or spring. How does that play in with what's the timeline? What's that process? When you say decommissioning, what does that mean?
Sure. So in general, that's what this whole proceeding is looking to outline, is what that will look like timeline. As it stands now, there isn't anything out there kind of laying out what that will look like. But that's kind of the goal of these proceedings. So if we take a step back and we look at the state goals through the CLCPA of wanting to reach 40% emissions reductions, we need to, in order to do that, we have to remove gas from the system. So what it might look like is kind of trimming down the gas lines from like the outside, or like figuring out like where it's used least and kind of like scaling back. It's not going to happen overnight. It'll be slowly, but that's what this whole proceeding is kind of figuring out what that will look like. And in terms of the letter that you got, I mean, there might be something wrong with your system that it needs to be replaced sooner.
Yeah, they're working on replacing leak-prone pipes, so it might be possible that the area that you're in has a leak-prone pipe, and they're trying to obviously to fix that before there's any issues. But yeah, otherwise Haley's spot on. There's no concrete outline right now for when individual pieces of infrastructure will be decommissioned and taken off.
Randy?
Yeah, I read a lot about this, and it's funny when you read all the articles, you go, is that true? Right? I mean, it could be in the Wall Street Journal or some other paper, and you read about what's going on with natural gas. And one of the things they talked about was how much electricity is being generated by natural gas in New York State, and how are they going to make that change, right? Convert that. And they said that's 20-some years out. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. So I'm just curious, when they look at this, or is one of the subjects they're looking at is to how electricity is being generated and how gas plays a part in that. So is that the mapping? Is that saying, okay, well, right now maybe 15% is generated through, and they're going to get down to 10? I mean, because we need electricity where our grids are growing in demand. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because NYSEG doesn't control the power generating assets. They just control the distribution network. And so the process is looking at, okay, what are the areas that are going to need gas the longest, right? What can't be replaced by gas? There are going to be certain things that are going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to replace with natural gas. A natural gas power generation is probably foremost among those. So I think right now what the process is really looking at is more towards the heating fuel side, using natural gas for heating fuel, and how to decommission that specific point. But part and parcel with that is how do you decommission industries that really need natural gas? And I think that that's part of what this is trying to figure out. Maybe they're the last ones off the line. Maybe they continue to use it. There's conversations around green hydrogen, renewable natural gas. Maybe those can be alternatives. In the same sense, maybe that'll be the case for the power generation as well. Maybe that's an alternative if, renewables don't come online in time.
Veronica, it looks like Anne's hand is up.
Yeah, Annie?
Thank you. The first question has to do with, you talked about, well, the presentation initially said RG&E, Rochester Gas and Electric, and NYSEG, and so then at one point in the presentation, I think you mentioned just RG&E. So are these, and then there's also part of the proceedings where it talks about, I can't remember now, like the 11 biggest gas producers in New York State. So can you help me just understand, is this just these two providers, RG&E and NYSEG?
Yeah, so for this proceeding, it focuses just on NYSEG and RG&E. They're grouped together because they have the same owner, Avangrid. But the other 10 largest utilities in the state are also going through similar proceedings with the Public Service Commission. But they're broken down by utility area. And so if I did mention RG&E separate, they're always together with NYSEG. So this is for both of them. They may have different provisions once the report comes out, but they'll be together.
Okay, and then my other question has to do with, you mentioned complying with the CLCPA, and that they have that now as part of their draft plan, but either it wasn't in there originally? Is that correct?
Yeah, so they lay out right in the beginning of their report that that's one of their objectives, is to comply with the CLCPA. In the solutions that they put forward, they did have some solutions that complied with the CLCPA, but then they also had solutions that said they were called delayed achievement scenarios, and ultimately that's what they recommended. And so a lot of things go into that, like cost and usage and those kinds of things kind of fill into that. But we were making the point that if whatever plan they put forward should comply with the CLCPA as it is state law. So we should be moving in that direction.
So actually comply with it, not just say they're going to comply
Right.
with it, right?
Yep.
And so thank you for doing this, because I imagine that there are only a few planning departments across the state, really participating as much as you folks are.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as we know, we might be the only municipality
In this proceeding.
in this proceeding. There are others in other utility areas.
Well, thank you for doing that.
A brief comment that delayed achievement scenarios sounds like a very fancy way to say straight up not doing what we said we were going to do.
I think that's exactly it.
And Randy, and then I've got a question.
So I'm thinking of how this affects Tompkins County. So I know that we're talking about building a new building, and that our backup generation is going to be using natural gas, right? So would that be something that is addressed in our discussion? Is like, well, we need backup power if the grid does go down. We're planning on using natural gas. Is that something that is that premature to talk about that, or is that something you talk about in that thing?
Yeah, I think, right now, the way the proceeding's going, it's just a conversation to look into the future and see kind of what the timelines might be. So it could be a scenario where we might still have natural gas for the next 10, 20 years. And so at some point, presumably down the line, the building will have to be on a source of backup power that may not be natural gas. I don't know that we can say with any definitive certainty when that might be. And so it might be a scenario where we look at the different alternatives for this building and say, okay, should we get a generator that can run on dual fuel? Can it run on natural gas and propane? Or what other options are out there? But I think for now, one of the big things in this is to maintain reliability of the system as well. And I think that that'll be a really important aspect that will probably keep natural gas going in some places longer than in others.
I had a couple questions. I guess first, not a question, but thank you for keeping up with this and participating and reporting back to us. I wouldn't have had any idea this was going on otherwise. And when you said, just to be clear, when you say anyone can participate, like you're talking to legislators now, but you mean like anyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if we were to sign up for the email list like you described, would that give us information about the Tompkins County specific meeting also? Or is that a public meeting?
It is a public meeting. It's actually happening tomorrow, tomorrow afternoon. And anybody who signs up on the email list gets notified of the meetings that are happening. We could plan to report back about that meeting if you're not able to attend.
If you did want to attend, we can send you the link. I think if you signed up tomorrow, I don't know how frequently they send up updates and things like that.
Okay, I'm interested in attending.
Okay.
And yeah, a brief report back would always be welcome, I think. What was my other, Annie asked one of my questions. Looking back at the context slide, we don't necessarily need to pull that back up, but you said the state goals are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions compared to a 1990 baseline by 40% by 2030, and we're most of the way to 2030. Where are we now?
That's a good question.
We're a little bit behind.
It's not your fault. Can you tell like more specifically if you know?
I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't have the exact numbers out of hand, but different goals. The big one that came out was there was a plan to get, I think it was 80% renewable electricity on the grid by 2035. And a lot of that was contingent on some of the large-scale wind farms that then ran into some pricing issues due to inflation and supply chain constraints, and a few of them had to pull out. So I think that that's having an impact as well. So we can find out the exact numbers and report back.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'm curious, have we reduced at all by any percent?
Yeah, from the
Okay.
1990 levels, we have reduced some, yeah. And a lot of it comes down to how you do different accounting, but we have reduced some. It's just not to the level that we need to be at quite yet.
And maybe this is an accounting question, but when we say for the county that we're trying to reach net zero emissions as fast as possible, would net zero emissions be the same as reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 100% from some past?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on how you want to do accounting. If we were to say we completely reduced our emissions, I think what that would probably entail for us is that we were not only not using any combustion sources of emissions that were producing immediate emissions, but that our electricity was renewable, but it was renewable on kind of what they call like a 24/7 basis. So you'd be able to account for every minute was being generated by a renewable asset. Right now, how we do it, it's more based on kind of annual figures. So that's where the net zero comes in. Net zero allows you to do things like use renewable energy certificates that are on a more annually tracked basis. That allows you to use carbon offsets if you so choose. So we're trying to head in that direction because it's a little bit more feasible for a municipality that doesn't have the resources that some of these tech companies that are going for true net zero are.
That makes sense. And sorry, my last question right now, and then Randy, zooming back to the state plan, are people talking about reducing consumption much in that, as opposed to just changing the source of energy?
Yeah, I mean, I think energy efficiency is a huge part of this. I don't know that there's certain percentages that are part of it, but I know
There's a whole different proceeding that we're not participating in. It's called New York. That's all about the energy efficiency goals that the state is trying to set in different areas. But yeah, that's a huge piece of it.
Thank you. Randy?
I agree with the reducing consumption. I mean, look at all the lights we have on. We probably don't need them all. No, I forgot my question. So maybe this is a facilities question. So we have Johnson Controls that kind of manages all our buildings and data and whatnot. And they're also must be providing us data saying how we are reducing things. That's why we hired them, right? So is that something they report on routinely, or?
When we had the previous energy performance contract, it was a pretty regular report. I'm actually planning on I'm aiming for late March right now to the legislature with a kind of a state of energy report that kind of talks about the county's energy usage and how we did with our Waterloo facility, which I gave last year, and our green fleet updates. And so I'll be trying to give the legislature, as I said, late March, don't hold me to it in case something has to slip, but I will try and provide some of that and compare 2022 to 2023. How did we do energy-wise after we started doing the Johnson projects?
Oh, great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Haley and Terry? All right, thanks for reporting and answering all these things.
Yeah.
Do you have anything more just from your department in general?
No, I don't think Katie is on, and she's just getting back from vacation. So I think we're good on our end.
Great, thank you. Moving on in that case to the county administrator's report. We've got a resolution and department goals. And, Lisa, hello.
Hi, I'm a little under the weather, so I elected to stay in my office with the door closed today to spare you all a coughing fit. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have. We have compiled and included the list of departmental goals for the departments that report to peak, namely recycling materials management and planning and sustainability. And I see representatives from both those departments here if you have questions about any of those goals.
Any questions from the committee? These goals are on packet pages 20 through 22. Looks like we have 2 goals from the Department of Planning and Sustainability, which has other goals that come under other committees, and many, many goals from Recycling and Materials Management.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Frankly, I didn't get a chance to read all the goal things for recycling, solid waste management. I'd like to talk to, maybe they could give a presentation on that, maybe at a later meeting, just to kind of go over this is exactly what we're doing. I mean, there's a lot here that obviously, but it doesn't have to be today, but.
Yeah, I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Leo, who I see is here. I also want to note that we have plenty of time. We're quite ahead of schedule in this meeting, so I think we could take some time to talk about them if you'd like. Leo, if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have them in front of me. But to Randy's point, I'd be more than happy to put something together and do a presentation at the next peak meeting on our goals and answer any questions.
Awesome, thank you. I guess something I noticed, quickly reading through the recycling and materials management goals is there's a lot more compliance and regulations and laws stuff than I was kind of aware of, which I guess shouldn't surprise me, but maybe that's something I need to learn more about. Other comments, questions from legislators? I had one on the first planning and sustainability goal about the 6 Mile Creek things. This goal looks like it's if awarded a certain grant. So if that grant isn't awarded, is there any work planned on the 6 Mile Creek analysis, or is it just going to have to wait till another grant cycle or something?
We would probably have to pivot and reapply in the July CFA round again for that, or maybe look at a different stream. But our hope was to do 6 Mile Creek because it seemed like it was more possible to get funding for that from the pot of money that we applied to, and then see how that looked and potentially try other streams and apply for funding to get more site-specific kind of a work program laid out for areas that could address erosion and flooding issues.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, excuse me, sorry. Hi, Katie. With this, what's the amount of funding that's being sought for this grant or this program? Do you have a ballpark or an exact number?
You know, I was looking it up as we were talking, like Leo, I don't have the grant in front of me. It was July that we applied. I'm guessing maybe $160,000. You know, somewhere between 75 and 160 would be my best guess.
Okay, so under 200,000.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
I guess maybe a comment about the second goal here from your department on the electricity emergency response plan just sounds very aligned with one of Randy's questions from the previous presentation. So that's good to see.
Yeah, I would say it's been interesting so far. Haley Delisle, who you just heard from in our department, is leading this effort, and she and Terry and myself, as possible, have been having conversations with peer counties around New York State, including like Boulder County out in Colorado, to talk about best practices and what people are doing. And there are some kind of interesting proactive things we could be working on at the county level, both to reduce demand, to make it less likely that we would have grid outages in the future, but also to help prepare us for when the inevitable grid outages happen in the future as well.
That's awesome. Thank you. Annie?
Thank you. And if you need help, from legislators on going out to Boulder to look at what they're doing, I am sure others would be happy to go with you. But I wanted to ask, so what other departments are working on that particular one? I would imagine Department of Emergency Response, Facilities, it probably involves many departments.
Yeah, I don't have the full list of interviewees, but I did sit in on the one with Mike Steitley, and it was great because he dealt with this exact problem when Superstorm Sandy hit down in New Jersey. So he had a lot of great insights to share with us on what people really need in those situations and how to try to proactively set those up.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments on peak department goals? All right, seeing none, Lisa, back to you.
I think then the only other thing I have for this committee is the resolution for soil and water lease.
Sounds good. I see Greg moves the resolution. Randy seconds. This is authorization of lease agreement renewal with Tompkins County Soil and Water Conservation District for space within the Tompkins County Public Works Facility, doc ID 12175. Pretty straightforward, but Lisa, do you want to speak to it?
This just authorizes me to enter into another 5-year agreement with Soil and Water. They share space, or they utilize space in our Bostwick Road facility. And this just delineates that space.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments? Let's vote. Annie?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Right. Anything else, Lisa?
That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And hope you feel better.
Thank you.
We are now on to committee members' reports and committee goals discussion. And I don't know what order you want to do these in. Maybe reports first, if anyone has things or is ready. Randy.
Yes, on March 18th, Cornell Cooperative Extension, with the cooperation of the Agricultural Farmland Protection Board, is going to have a meeting. I think it's going to be in Enfield or Lansing, and it's to invite farmers to come and learn how to transition their land. And so that's a big subject because land's very tough to get. And the other part of that is identifying land that you want to protect to maintain that in agriculture. And this program will talk about how the state will pay for development rights for land to stay in agriculture. So we're going to invite, and they'll pay a considerable amount of money, up to half the value of the acreage, which is a lot, the way land is going these days. And so a lot of discussion in that group about aging farmers and that do want to transition their land, but they don't have family members or anybody to transition to. So it ends up getting sold quite often to the highest bidder. And so there are a lot of people who want to get in farming. In fact, Cornell Crop Extension has a list of 40 different individuals that are interested in getting in farming that is focused on providing local foods. But they can't buy land because if it's $10,000 an acre, then they can't afford to buy this land. So this is kind of a win-win that we're trying to focus on. So that's going to be March 18th, and the agenda's not out yet. So.
Great, thank you. Annie.
I had first a question for Randy. So is that, when you say transition their land, so you mean to keep it in farming, so to transition from them using it to somebody else using it for farm?
Yes, yep.
Okay. And I had a little report, if I could go with that. So at the Climate and Sustainable Energy Liaison Board or Advisory Board, they've mentioned this a couple of times, that in 2024, they're a temporary board. So this has been mentioned before, so you might remember this. So at this year, we need to look at this committee, and the legislature needs to look at, do we want to continue with their board and make it a permanent board, or do we want to dissolve the board? So I'll talk with them. I'd like some ideas from you folks, but what I was thinking is to have, one or two of them come as representatives and talk to us about, what they do, and then, we can have a discussion on, and that'll help inform us as to what we want to recommend for that. And then at EMC, the Environmental Management Council, at their latest meeting, and this is possibly a small thing, but they keep up on the Adopt a Highway areas, and they said that there's only a listing. It's in our highway department, of the Tompkins County Highway Department part of the website. There's just a listing of, here's this road from this juncture to this juncture, and what organization has volunteered to pick up the litter of that area. And they said it would be more helpful to have a map, because for visuals for people to see as they're going out and doing that. And I thought about it later, that actually that would probably help if there was a map where you would see the gaps too, so that, and then we could maybe encourage people in the community, or EMC could encourage organizations to sign up for areas where there are those gaps. So that's something I'll either try and attend facilities and infrastructure, or I'll contact, Jeff at our highway department and see, find out more about that. And that's all I had. And so that kind of combines our goals and our liaison reports. I didn't have any other goals, but interested to hear if anybody else has any reports or suggested goals for this year.
Sure. I have a report that's probably not related to goals, but Randy, did you want to go first?
I have a goal. So the county funded through the ARPA funding, converting 50 manufactured homes to reduce their energy consumption. But also Cornell Crop Extension is doing something similar. And I heard there might be a third group doing something. So it'd be nice to understand, really what is going on. And maybe Sustainable Finger Lakes could report on that. Cornell Crop Extension, I think they did 26 homes last year. So I think the plan's to do 25 more this year. I don't know how those programs work at all. I just learned about that one, frankly, and I've been on that board for 2 years. So it's amazing what you find out. But they've got an aggressive goal, and I know that they're doing various, they got big grants to do additional homes, and I'm just not clear on all of that. So I think it'd be a good goal for us to be informed about that and to learn. So.
Thanks, Randy. I would like to learn more about that too. Yeah. I could take a turn, I would like to take a turn with a report back, not related to that, but from the Fish and Wildlife Management Board. Just a few highlights from the last meeting in January, not related to each other. One, there was someone from the Search and Rescue Service who was just giving a little report back, but one of the things that caught my attention was that one of the top designations for backcountry injuries, or like things that caused a search and rescue to be called after ankle and knee injuries, was despondent individual, which is sad, and I think just an added illustration that mental health issues show up truly everywhere. The DEC is working on their new open space plan, which is required for them to be able to acquire land. They do some analysis of just the land throughout all their regions and look at what would be a high priority spot to be protected. And this round, they're focusing on habitat connectivity to try to find where new land is needed for protection, and to be able to, I guess, connect habitats so that migrating populations of wildlife or just non-migrating but needing to spread out can more easily do that. And we're in Region 7, and the Region 7 director is trying to get more collaboration with the Department of Transportation around that, because deer crossing highways, highways crossing forests is a large source of obstacles to wildlife moving around. Speaking of deer, or we can go to Katie first, actually, because these were not related.
Thanks. You just reminded me, I wanted to let you all know that I am the county's representative on the Region 7 Open Space Planning Committee, and I've been tapping into that as possible. They keep scheduling meetings when I have conflicts, and they're in person in Syracuse, so it's been difficult to participate. Andy Zepp from the Finger Lakes Land Trust and I have been coordinating. He is a representative appointed by, I think, DEC to be on that Region 7 committee as well. So, you know, both Andy and I have been on these committees since, I think, 1996, the first time they did one of these plans. It hasn't been updated in many years, and so this is a new update. Kind of in the past years, we went from kind of project-specific areas to more kind of talking about ecosystems that need protection. So Andy and I both feel pretty good about the land areas that are included in the plan right now, because it allows for flexibility to allocate funds as opportunities arise in key resource areas. So yeah, right now it's more focused on policy recommendations, and habitat connectivity is a big one. I will say there is emerging a little bit of a tension between renewable energy generation and habitat corridors. So I'm not sure exactly how the committee's going to land on that in terms of policy recommendations to the state, but that's a hot topic being discussed as well.
Thanks, Katie. And that came up at the Fish and Wildlife Management Board meeting as well. But I will say one of the most fun parts about this plan was getting to see some giant maps with more shades of green than I knew existed, coloring the different habitats.
They're very proud of those maps.
They're great maps.
They're interesting.
Couple other things from the board meeting. I learned there's a little update on deer damage permits, which I guess are things that a municipality or other entity can get to allow shooting deer on their land. Tompkins County has 4 of them that are active in the village of Trumansburg, village of Lansing, Cornell, and the town of Ithaca, and an inactive one in the village of Cayuga Heights, just for information. We're happy to hear that the governor's proposed budget includes money for DEC capital projects, which is, I think, consistently sorely needed, and support for the Eastern Finger Lakes Coalition of Soil and Water Conservation Districts, which is something that our Tompkins County Soil and Water Conservation District helped advocate for, so that's pretty exciting. And finally, the Onondaga County Federation of Sporting Clubs holds a Women in Nature program every year, which is free to participants for women and girls, youth to do an all-day workshop where they get to do various nature things. Some of it is like hunting, fishing, I don't know if like orienteering, backcountry skills, just all sorts of introductory outdoor skills. And applications are open now, due March 12th. There's a good chance that spots have already filled and they're creating a waiting list at this point, but still worth saying. And I think the Onondaga Federation has is continuously open to and interested in sharing all of their, like, how to run this program information with anyone in any other counties that might want to run one. And that's it from the Fish and Wildlife Management Board. So, any other reports or updates or thoughts on committee goals? Hearing none. So I guess we have two goals right now: the decide in collaboration with the case board what to do with the case board going forward, and get some education and updates on the, like, what would you call it? Like energy efficiency renovations of manufactured homes getting done by, it sounds like, at least 2, if not 3 organizations.
Grants happening behind the scenes that they're being applied for, and so I'm just kind of curious how it all flows.
Okay, yeah.
Energy warriors, I think, is the term they were using, something like that.
Yeah, Energy Warriors is like one specific program, right? Yeah.
I do have, one of my thoughts on goals, and this goes back to Leo in that system. We have a pretty aggressive plan that was approved going forward, reduce our waste. And I think we need to really dive into that this year and really understand that and how collaboration, whether it's with reuse or whoever, Cornell, IC, all those things that they're already doing behind the scenes, how that all works and how we can improve that cycle, and how we can eliminate waste from the stream. So I think that'd be now that you have a plan, it'd be really to dive into that, I think, is a great goal.
Yeah, thank you. Greg?
Yeah, this sort of just came to my thought process. So I'm thinking out loud as I'm going through this, but I would love to see, and this is not maybe just specifically to this committee, but across all committees, as we look at departmental goals, trying to really understand how the legislature and how the committees can be supportive of those goals. Obviously, in the Department of Planning and Sustainability is a very robust work plan, in recycling and materials management, very robust work plan, with a lot of things that are very staff level, or more staff oriented. May not be as much policy or other ways that the legislature could play a role. So, maybe Lisa, to you is, as we go through some of these next couple of months, the early months of this year, encouraging departments maybe to highlight from the goals that they submit to flag either committee chairs or committees in general, ways in which they expect ways in which they foresee needing legislative support or action throughout the year, and when that might be coming. I think would just take these from more informational to then be really supportive to legislative committees kind of developing a work plan that's also supportive of county department level priorities, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does make sense, Greg, and that's really what the intended purpose of sharing the larger overall goals are for the year, is just that, so that the legislators and the program committee are aware of what the department is working toward over the given year, and that the committee can work in sync with the department and can assist in terms of any of those higher level advocacy or policy making functions. But it's also, at the very basic level, so that the departments and the committees aren't working at odds with one another, or that departments aren't, that everyone's kind of staying in their lane, and all of the work is is in support of one another. So we can certainly go back and I can speak to departments too about highlighting those areas where the work of the committees can be helpful in furthering their goals.
Yeah, and again, not trying to make, not make more work or another report or anything like that, but just, maybe in future years moving forward, it's a highlight of, this is really something that is going to require legislator involvement or, committee involvement. Because again, a lot of this is informational, and it's great to see the complexity and learn each year even more about the departments that we work with. But, I know personally I have a strong desire, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I would make an assumption that they also want to be supportive of staff initiatives. And how can that line and that communication be clearer between goals and then actions that we can take, so that it's just not information sharing, but really it's a collaborative work process. So,
Sure, understood.
awesome, thank you.
And I saw everyone nodding along, as Greg said. We want to be supportive, so I think you can speak for all of us on this one. Yeah. And I wonder, in conjunction with what you just said, Greg, if it's also maybe on us, the committee members, or at least committee chairs, to all of us probably, to look through the goals and stay, remind ourselves of them through the year, and then ask, I guess, like you all, department heads, as it occurs to us or as it seems to come up, hey, how is this thing going? Like, hey, do you need support with this? Did there happen to be any news on this thing you said you were going to stay abreast of? Or maybe at the end of the year asking, how did this go? Annie.
Just to say a yes and to what Greg had brought up. I mean, just thinking back this past year, there's sometimes where that kind of, I don't know if I want to say organically, because it's actually, I guess, structured that way. For instance, say from, whether it's recycling to bring forth their new strategy plans, and they brought that, to us, many times. And then with planning, with the update on the green building policy. So we were able to have some input, and other committees were able to have input on it. So I do like the idea, in addition to what Greg said, is which I think we're already doing, and so I don't think it can, hurt to be asked to maybe stay abreast a little bit more, rather than, there's occasions where we're hearing something about it and it's like pretty much done, or we just need to do a resolution that, that maybe we don't realize departments are working on something. And I do remember several years back, maybe we weren't as in tune to what the departments were working on. So, and I do like that people are bringing up too, well, I'm more interested in this, like, if Randy or Greg or Veronica or Amanda, someone says, I'm more interested in this and I want to know more about that. So this is a time to do that, but it's also a time as we go throughout the year. And I do see that as, one of our biggest goals is to support all the great work, that is already happening. So thanks for bringing that up, Greg.
Thanks, Annie. Other things to say from anybody? I see, Leo, you came on video. I don't know if you have responses to any of this. No pressure.
Yeah, I was just preparing myself if anybody had any questions, but I do certainly agree with Greg and what was going through my mind when Greg was talking about, highlighting some of the goals that certainly need your support. One that came to mind was us updating our solid waste laws here. We've got Westlaw Group that's working on that, and that would be a good example of, I think, keeping everybody informed month to month on where we stand with those laws. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Katie?
Yeah, I would just add, our department would welcome closer collaboration with legislators on what we do. We do pretty carefully think through how to get input from our advisory boards, the public, the legislature, along the way for our most of our processes that we work on. But I do think there's more room for collaboration, and I don't know if that's, meetings with certain departments. We report to 3 different committees now, so it makes it a little challenging. But if you all have any ideas on how to make that happen more easily, I'm all ears. I'd love to hear it.
Well, you're right downstairs. We could just hang out.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not there today, but.
Yes. Your department collectively and often. Anyone else? This is the last thing we have on our agenda for today. So I guess we'll open it up to if anyone has anything to say about anything. Sorry, I'm not very eloquent this morning. Anything related to peak before we close. Seeing none, we can adjourn. Thank you all. Have a great remainder of the morning.
Thanks, Veronica.
Thanks, Annie.